Alright, what is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. You're watching Nwadei MMA, where I give you my thoughts, but more importantly ask for you guys' thoughts as we talk about everything about the MMA community, because there's always something going on. And today we're going to be talking about the storyline of UFC 316, headlined by Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley 2, the rematch. Again, this is a new series that I've been doing, and I know I've been a little slow on content as of late, but that's because, of course, I got a new fight coming up on June 22nd. And so I've been prepping, getting ready. That's why, yeah, your boy does not have a chop or anything. We're looking rough out here, but it's okay. It's all for a good purpose, right? So thank you to the guys who continue to support me, even when I'm a little slow on content. It means the world to me. But with that being said, let's get right into the storyline of UFC 316. So I think everyone kind of is looking forward to the main event of this card, with Merab fighting Sean O'Malley for the second time. It's the rematch. This is actually an immediate rematch for Sean O'Malley, which a lot of people don't feel like he deserved, but we're going to get into all of that, and we're going to get into how history might be told about UFC 316 in a second. First, we're going to look at the rest of the card, because the prelims are actually really good. We have Wang Kong coming up through the ranks. We know Valentina Shevchenko just defended her belt. Wang Kong, if you don't know who she is, she's actually one of the kickboxers who defeated Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing or Muay Thai. And she did have a little hiccup in her UFC stint. She had one loss, but she's been looking better ever since, and she's fighting Ariane Lipski, which is a good test for her. But they're trying to get her up through those ranks to potentially have another storyline like a Pereira Adesanya for Valentina Shevchenko. Of course, we know in the meantime, Valentina Shevchenko just defended her belt against Manon Fiorot, and now is looking forward to fighting potentially Zhang Weili, who's looking to move up a weight. So there's a lot of implicating on this fight at Wang Kong, because Valentina's towards the end of her career. She has the most rubies on the belt, and she's getting ready for a super fight. Meanwhile, in the wakes of her championship reign, Wang Kong is out here destroying girls and making the improvements from kickboxing to MMA look quite easy. We also have Johnny Walker, the ever exciting light heavyweight on this card. We have Bruno Silva versus Joshua Van on this card. Joshua Van has, I think, had 7 fights since he's been in UFC for like 2 years. So he's been very active. He's been one of the most exciting flyweights in the UFC in these past 2 years, coming straight from Fury FC, where I'm gonna be fighting in Houston, Texas. And he is the first person to raise a Myanmar mat flag in the UFC. With that being said, he takes on the double tough Bruno Silva. This is a chance to see if he can redeem himself. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He lost one, and he was on like a 3-fight win streak before that, or 4-fight win streak before that. But this is looking to see if he could really push into that top 10, top 5, and look to be one of the youngest champions that's ever been, especially in the flyweight division. We also have Vicente Luque versus Kevin Holland, another Texas native on this card, and Kevin Holland is going back down to welterweight. If we look at his last 2 fights, Kevin Holland, he fought at middleweight against Renier de Ridder, where he lost by submission, and then he fought Gunnar Nelson, and we saw how the weight really does play a factor in how he wasn't able to just get taken down and kind of ragdolled and submitted by Gunnar Nelson. Instead, he put on a very impressive display of not only jiu-jitsu but just mixed martial arts in general, which we all know Kevin Holland is capable of. Honestly, the story of Kevin Holland, it doesn't stop at just journeyman or contender or whatever disrespectful term you want to use. Kevin Holland, we all know, has the talents and the skills to potentially make a run and become champion one day, but where is his head at? Because the last we heard, he doesn't care about any of the belts. He doesn't care about making a championship run. He just cares about making his money, potentially getting pay-per-view points without even being a champion, just because he's such a star, and fighting often. And to be honest, the higher you get in the ranks, the less you get to fight. So we don't even know if he cares to be high up in the rankings or if he cares just to bounce around between weight classes. But from what we know, Kevin Holland's only lost twice at welterweight. And at middleweight, he lost both against Roman Dolidze, getting injured, and then at Renier de Ridder, ever since moving back up. But he did get a win over Michal Lolasejczyk. So, like I said, it's all about where Kevin Holland's head is at. But either way, man, this is a very exciting fight. We know Vicente Luque has been against everyone. It's only a year difference between the two. Vicente being 33 and Kevin Holland being 32. But man, Luque looked good in his outing against Themba Gorimbo. I mean, right away, right in that first round, submitting Themba Gorimbo with his fucking universal darts. I mean, he was waiting on that Nick Diaz fight for so long that never really materialized, that he only really got one fight last year, and in the last 2 years he's only had 2 fights. So the activity maybe hasn't been there for him that much, but we also have to think about all the wars he's been in. It's probably been good that he hasn't been fighting that often. But 2023 he beat Rafael dos Anjos. He's fought the who's who like Bilal Muhammad and Jeff Neal. In 2024 he submitted Themba Gorimbo, and then now he's fighting Kevin Holland. This should be a all-time favorite fight if it all plays out. But man, talking about all of these Texans and Houstonians, we gotta talk about my boy Mark DeCastro, because this video is brought to you by DC Recovery. If you live in the Houston area and you're an athlete like me, you know that you have multiple workouts a day. You're constantly breaking down your body, especially if you train in the martial arts. And something that I've learned from over the years, that what's more important than that initial push or how hard you're training is also how well you're recovering. And DC Recovery helps me to recover after my grueling sessions and workouts in the gym. That way I'm prepared and ready to train for the next day or week, not having to deal with all these little nagging injuries. Man, he really is the best sports massage therapist for all kinds of athletes, and he's right here in the Houston area. So if you guys have a chance, go ahead and check him out on Instagram at DC Recovery, the Giant Slayer. Oh, and one more thing, one of my favorite quotes by a fighter is Nate Diaz when discussing the greatest of all times. And this was around the time where Kamaru Usman was actually reigning as champion, and Dana White was calling him the greatest of all time in the welterweight division. And Nate Diaz had something to say about that, of course, but what he said was, if you're a GOAT, then make a GOAT. And that's something that actually I've lived by, and something I look for whenever I'm dealing with the best of the best in one certain aspect, whether that's martial arts or sports massage therapy. And the fact that DC Recovery also offers courses that you could take taught by him on how to slay giants or how to become a sports massage therapist, different techniques that he uses, and so on and so forth, is just another reason why you can trust his level of understanding of the body and how to help athletes recover. So again, if you're in the Houston area, go ahead and check him out or follow him on Instagram at DC Recovery, and I bet you'll thank me that you did. Now, moving on to the main card of UFC 316. This is where it gets interesting, because let's not forget, again, our headline is Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley, which is taking place in the bantamweight division. And we also have another bantamweight fight on this card, starting off the main card with Mario Bautista versus Patchy Mix. Now, a lot of you know Mario Bautista as the guy who, you know, held Jose Aldo up against the cage and made it a very boring fight, but he's actually really good, very well-rounded, great grappling. I think on like a 5 or 7 fight win streak, if I'm not mistaken, fighting out of the MMA lab. Let me see this. He has wins over Jose Aldo, Ricky Simone, Damon Blackshear. He has a win over Guido Canetti, Benito Lopez, Brian Kelleher, Jay Perrine. That's a 7 fight win streak, man. And a 7 fight win streak in the bantamweight division is no light work. And he's fighting Patchy Mix, who is one of the best fighters in bantamweights who was outside of the UFC. He was the Bellator bantamweight champion of the world after he beat Javier Stotts. Another person who it was one of the best bantamweights outside of the UFC, someone who actually fought Merab Dvalishvili, and it was between Merab or him on who got to go into the UFC. So all in all, this is just to say that the UFC recently has been absorbing all these people from other organizations and has been moving them into these high profile fights. Like Mario Bautista, you get a win over him, you're maybe 1 away from the title shot. And on the flip side, you get a win over a champion from another organization, you're probably 1 away from a title shot. So not only did they do that with Patchy Mix, but they've also done it with Patricio Pitbull. Of course, we know they did it with Michael Chandler, Michael Venom Page. All these people who are champions in outside organizations coming in got these high profile fights, Kaya Sakura, right away. And we're seeing this become a trend, to see, like, you know, is it sink or swim? And to be honest, I think it's good because Patchy Mix was in a situation with the PFL to where he wasn't getting the amount of fights that he was wanting, and so it's good that they released him from his contract and he's able to come to the UFC, and now we get to see what he is able to do in the UFC. I mean, Patchy Mix, just to finish this off and give you guys some context on how good he really is. I mean, he finished Andre Ewell outside of the UFC. He defeated Kyoji Horiguchi, which is a big win, especially outside of the UFC. Multiple time world champion in Kyoji Horiguchi. Magomed Magomedov, who had defeated Peter Yan. I believe him and Peter Yan went 1-1 back in Peter Yan's local scene. He defeated Magomed Magomedov twice. He knocked out Rafael Statu with a knee, submitted Sergio Pettis. I mean, like I said, Patchy Mix is the best of the best when it comes to fighters in the bantamweight division. And if I count this up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he's also on a 7-fight win streak. So this is a 7-fight win streak versus 7-fight win streak. UFC versus someone from Bellator, the second-rate organization. Let's see how it plays out. However, moving forward on the card, we got Joe Pyfer versus Kelvin Gastelum. You know, to be honest, Joe Pyfer, guy with a tough background. You know, his dad used to beat him as a kid. We saw his story on Joe Rogan. This is a guy that UFC tried to push really quick. He ran into a doorstop at Jack Hermanson, who he couldn't get out of there. He's known for his knockout power, so him not being able to get a vet out of there and then seeing him kind of crumble under 5 rounds was a big deal in his first main event. But after that, he's been on what, like a 2-fight knockout streak or a 2-fight finish streak, and now he's about to fight Kelvin Gastelum, who's moving back up to middleweight, so maybe an unmotivated Kelvin Gastelum, and a guy who's taken quite a lot of damage in his career, dating back all the way from that Israel Adesanya fight. I think Joe Pyfer probably has a good shot at winning this, but that's kind of the storyline going into that. It's either sink or swim for Kelvin Gastelum right now. I think at this point in his career, his last 2 fights have been against Daniel Rodriguez, which he actually won, and then Sean Brady. He also beat Chris Curtis. I mean, he's just been win, loss for the past couple of years, and I'd like to see him put 2 wins in a row. His last one was against Danny Rod at middleweight technically, but it was only because he missed weight, and so that's kind of why he's moving up. But now he's taking another fight at middleweight, so it's like, let's see how dedicated he really is, right? And now moving on to the co-main event, Juliana Pena versus Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison being the 2-time judo gold medalist, and Juliana Pena being the 1-time bantamweight champion, Ultimate Fighter winner in the UFC. Kayla Harrison was the champion in PFL, winning I think 2 tournaments in a row, which means she was undefeated for 2 years. I think winning maybe like 8 or 10 fights in a row. I mean, she's 18-1 with only 1 defeat, with wins over really good girls, even though they don't have the name value that any UFC female fighters would have. But I think the most interesting thing about this is that finally, after 2 wins over Holly Holm and a tough Ketlin Vieira, Kayla Harrison's finally getting that shot at Juliana Pena, who's 1-1 with Amanda Nunes. And why do I bring in Amanda Nunes? Because Amanda Nunes is coming back from retirement. She's coming back to fight one or the other. One girl who used to train with her in Kayla Harrison, who has been calling her out for a couple years now and saying she's scared and this and that. They kind of used to train together, so it's kind of bad blood on that end that Kayla Harrison is doing that. But she's either going to fight her, or if Juliana Pena beats her, it's a girl who really wants that trilogy fight, who beat her in the first fight for maybe the biggest upset in UFC history. And then it was a hard, tough fight that second time around, going all 5 rounds. She dominated her. She dominated most of the rounds, most of the fights. She dropped her multiple times, but there was a couple times where she almost got out of there herself. And so that was a tough fight. And so either fight is going to be a big fight for women's MMA history. And Amanda Nunes coming back, the lioness, the GOAT, returns. Oh man, imagine a world where Amanda Nunes comes back and fights the winner of Kayla Harrison versus Juliana Pena, and tell me you won't be excited. And now, before getting into the main event, this video is also brought to you by Chef Hat Pirates. Again, if you are in the Houston area and you're looking for delicious Mexican cuisine, tacos, and you want the most delicious tacos that you can get in Houston catered to you for any event, party, or wedding, then look no further than Chef Hat Pirates out of Houston, Texas for all your taco catering needs. I know they keep me fueled up during camp, carb loaded, big and swole, so you know, get at them if you're trying to stay lean and mean like myself, and give them a follow on Instagram. So we get to the main event, Merab versus Sean O'Malley. Now, in order to tell the story properly of this fight, we have to delve into Merab on his own, because we all know the superstar that Sean O'Malley is. We know the crazy run he went on, people saying he wasn't fighting anybody, then he gets thrown into this immediate #1 contender fight with Petr Yan, and man, has a war with Petr Yan, beats him, and then everyone's counting him out against Aljamain Sterling. Beats him, knocks him out in the second round, gets dropped on ESPN. It was like the first free pay-per-view main event to be dropped on ESPN out of nowhere for free, and it built just what was a superstar in Sean O'Malley. Then we come to find out that he was fighting with a rib injury, and that he couldn't grapple or train or wrestle all camp, and that in his head it was sink or swim if he got caught by one of the best grapplers that we've seen in the bantamweight division, one of the best fighters, maybe at that time the greatest bantamweight champion that we saw in the UFC, that if he got touched or grappled or taken down by him, that it could be over because he wasn't able to wrestle at all during the camp, and he knocks him out. And then he fights Chito Vera, redeems a loss. You know the story of Sean O'Malley right before Merab. Merab's the complete other side of the universe. I mean, Sean O'Malley's this superstar that the UFC's been pushing. Merab was for a long time kind of like this boring villain that the UFC was trying to get out of there, get out of the top contender spots, feeding him harder and harder fights before really giving him an opportunity to fight that title shot. I mean, Dvalishvili, I believe, won 9 or 10 fights in a row before he even got a title shot. Now I think it's at like 12 or 13 fights that he's won in a row, which is absolutely ridiculous. But if we go down the list, we were talking about Aljamain Sterling potentially being the greatest bantamweight champion of all time, with his wins over Henry Cejudo, his wins over Corey Hagan, Petr Yan, twice technically if you think about it, TJ Dillashaw, right? Great wins. But let's talk about Merab Dvalishvili, because Merab had wins over John Dodson, Marlon Moraes, Cody Stamen, Jose Aldo, Petr Yan, where she set records for how many times he took him down, Sean O'Malley, Henry Cejudo, and now Umar Nurmagomedov as well. I mean, the amount of champions that were just on that list that I named for you, not only just champions, but top contenders as well. The amount of people I just named for you, of course, he has to be up there as one of the greatest bantamweights of all time. Now, I am still in the belief that Dominic Cruz right now is the greatest bantamweight of all time. But, there's a lot of recency bias, and Merab, fuck, man, he just might be, dude, with his style. He might not be the most exciting of all time, but the cardio he possesses, his efficiency when fighting, and his ability to just dominate a 5-round fight is second to none, I think, in bantamweight history. And so people are suggesting that Merab just may be the greatest bantamweight of all time. That's what's kind of on the line. Someone that the UFC did not want to bloom because of their fighting style. Somehow, through controversy and all, through the UFC trying to make him fight his best friend and Aljamain Sterling and all because his friend Aljamain Sterling was champion and just was beating everybody at the time, to now be bantamweight champion like he presumed that he always would, and be defending the belt against Umar Nurmagomedov and getting the belt from Sean O'Malley at the Sphere in a monumental event. Guys, I don't think it gets much bigger for the bantamweight division. I think that Merab, again, this dates back to Merab stealing Sean O'Malley's jacket. This dates back to before UFC 306. Then they had that monumental fight together at the Sphere. And the fight itself, maybe it wasn't a barn burner, maybe it wasn't the most exciting fight. A lot of times, it's not going to be that with Merab Dvalishvili. That's not why we watch him. We watch him to see who the best mixed martial artist is with the UFC rule set. Because I think it would be different if it was maybe like a one championship rule set or something like that. But the rules are what they are, and that's what this game is. With that being said, going into the fight, the way I thought about it, and a lot of people who analyzed the game, the way they thought about it was, Merab is the favorite. I didn't think that, but most people thought Merab was the favorite, that he was going to take him down, then Sean wouldn't be able to get up. Man, that's kind of what happened. Kind of. But you go back, you watch the fight, the judges gave Sean round 3 and 5. These are not lies. These are factual. They gave him round 3, which I do agree with, and round 5, where he hurt him to the body, almost finished the fight, if we're being real. And the closest person to finishing that fight was Sean O'Malley. So, again, if you're talking about who's better or who won that fight, it was close enough for you to kind of see it either way, but it depends on how you scored that first round, which was also very close. If you're looking at damage, you got to give it to Sean, but Sean also got his head snapped back a couple times. He also got controlled and taken down a little bit in that first round by Merab. And so the judges gave it to Merab. You could see where the judges factored in the grappling, but again, the #1 scoring criteria is damage, and there's all this controversy. And then after the fight, it comes out that Sean had a torn labrum in his hip, and that he got immediate surgery, while Merab is off on the other hand. Instead of going on vacation, that Dana puts him right into another title fight against Umar Nurmagomedov, who people are saying he's running from. Goes out there, defeats Umar Nurmagomedov, the Dagestani style, Khabib's cousin, Umar Nurmagomedov's brother, however you want to call it. Goes out there and defeats him, and honestly kind of beats him at what he's best at, wrestling. And now they have the rematch. Sean just getting out of surgery. He's been in like a 15-week camp, which everyone knows is exhausting, but maybe much needed, because now he's been training the grappling, he's been training the wrestling, and then we figure out that Merab was also hurt going into that fight. And I mean, we didn't just find that out after the fight, we found that out before UFC 306, because he posted it himself. Merab posted that he had a big ass gash right over his eye in training before the fight. And imagine if that would have opened up during the fight, which it didn't. But imagine if it would have. What would have people said that? And Merab is no different this time around by posting that he had a broken toe. He posted this. Usually you try to keep this information away from your opponents, but he's posting right now that he has a broken toe, almost insinuating that Sean O'Malley is making excuses for his loss because he was injured. Now, history is told by the victors. If Sean O'Malley ends up losing to Merab Dvalishvili again, after Merab is posting this whole thing about him having another cut and him having a broken toe or broken foot, and he goes out there and he beats Sean O'Malley again, maybe Merab will be the greatest of all time. But what happens if the flip side happens? What happens if Sean O'Malley, who's undefeated in rematches, has only had one rematch in his career, and he won it handedly against Chito Vera, which, keep in mind, was kind of the same situation. People are saying Sean's making excuses now for his performance against Merab, but people were saying the same thing for his performance against Chito Vera. They were saying the same thing, that he was making excuses, that he lost, he doesn't know how to take a loss, but then he showed you in the rematch. What if everything Sean's saying is true? And what if Sean defies the odds, defies being an underdog, goes out there and beats Merab Dvalishvili, the current greatest of bantamweight of all time, after defeating the greatest bantamweight in Aljamain Sterling, his teammate? What does that do for the bantamweight division? Who's the greatest bantamweight then? Where are the excuses at then? And if that happens, does Corey Sandhagen get the title shot? Or where does he fit into all of this? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. But with that being said, thank you guys for stopping by for another video at Nwadei MMA and watching the storyline of UFC 316 and how everything is gonna play out in a week or so. Guys, as always, stay safe, stay blessed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check out future episodes of my podcast and other breakdowns I do on BJJ for MMA. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.